what kept that number from being lower is we saw big increases to Japan. So Japan's our biggest export market. And we saw exports to Japan increase by 8% in 2024. So that was our largest export market by volume. So about 21% of our total exports went to Japan last year. 21% also went to South Korea, just a touch lower, but still 21%. China was third. 16% of exports went to China, which Meghan, you and I have talked about this before. To think back 3 or 4 or 5 years ago to say that 16% of our beef exports would be going to China is significant from when it was at zero, not super long ago. So China third. Mexico was fourth this year. 11% of our total beef exports went to Mexico in 2024. We look at the monthly data. Just I'll touch on that real quick, and then pass it back to you. We can kick off the import discussion. Exports were 3% higher in December. So the latest data that came out finished out the year. But if you look at the monthly data, we did see a 3% bump in increase in December compared to December of 2023.
All right, so let's talk the import side of things. Obviously, with cattle inventory numbers that continue to shrink and have continued to shrink over the last couple of years, to meet our demand, we've had to import more beef. When you look at the import data for the year, 24%, or an increase of 24%. Talk to me a little bit about your takeaway from that, and what are some of the things you're watching as you look ahead to 2025 and probably into 2026?
Yeah, I think you touched on it, Meghan. We've got tighter supplies. We've got tighter beef supplies, tighter cattle supplies. We've already set the stage to have tighter supplies in 2025. We did end up producing more than we initially expected to produce in 2024, but still, we're in this situation where we've got lower cattle numbers. The one that jumps out to me and to everybody is the one you mentioned, the 24% increase, 4.6 billion pounds of beef imported in 2024. Australia was the biggest source there, which is not surprising, but about 24% of the total. So 24% of that 4.6 billion pounds came from Australia. Canada was second. 22% of our beef imports came from Canada. Brazil was third at 15%. Mexico was fourth on beef imports this year at 13%. Out of all of those countries I just mentioned, Mexico was the only one, and really the only one out of our top import partners that we saw a decline in. Every other country we saw an increase in, driven by those stronger prices that we have here in the U.S. And a really strong dollar compared to a lot of currencies that were other currencies as well. So Mexico was the only one that was lower. If you look at just the December number, I'll touch on that real quick. That gets overshadowed by the annual number, but imports during December were 30% above December of 2023.
When we talk about what we're importing, Josh, do you think it is of note the type of beef that we're importing and why we're looking to other countries?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the majority of what we're importing is going into our lean trim. It is lean trim that's going into ground beef. If you look at our ground beef values and what they've been, we don't have nearly enough cull cows to satisfy the lean trim that we need here in the U.S. that we mix with the fatty trimmings from our fat steers and heifers. So when you think about the cattle or the beef that we're importing from Australia in particular, it's a lot of lean beef that is going into ground beef, going into hamburger to meet that demand. And Meghan, we talked before about this, that a lot of that really does add value to U.S. cattle production. I don't, there's certainly some of it that you could view as competes with U.S. produced beef, but there's also, when you think about lean trims like that mixed with the beef that we produce here can actually add value to that total. So it's not all gloomy. I guess I should say it's a mix. It's a pretty complicated mix.